Arth or possibly Basemath married their cousin Esau. GE 28. 9. 36. 2. 3. The descendants of Nebaioth are not identified as living in any definite locality. They were probably nomads, moving about as Bedouin with their flocks. In the time of Isaiah, the flocks of Kedar was Nebaioth's brother, and the rams of Nebaioth were associated together in a prophecy foretelling how such animals would serve as approved sacrifices on Jehovah's altar. Issa 60. 7. Some scholars have attempted to equate the descendants of Nebaioth with the Nabateans of later times, but the evidence in support of such a suggestion is inconclusive. Nebalat ne Middle.Alat. A place settled by Benjamites after the Babylonian exile. Ne 11. 31, 34. Nebalat is generally identified with Beit Balahorvat Nebalat. Situated on Elo Hill about 6 km 3.5 mi of modern Lutherlod, Beit Bala overlooks the send of the plain of Sharon. Nbat and Nebat he has looked at. An Ephraimite and father of King Jeroboam, the first ruler of the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel. 1 Kai 11. 26. 2 Kai 14. 23, 24. Nebo and Nebo. 1. A Moabite city that came under the control of Amorite king Sihon sometime before the Israelites entered the Promised Land. Compare New 21. 26. 32. 3. Issa 15. 2. Subsequent to Israel's defeating Sihon, the Reubenites rebuilt Nebo. New 32. 37, 38. By the early part of the 9th century BCE, however, it appears that the Reubenites won ch. 5. 1, 8 lost the city. 4, on the Moabite stone, King Mesha boasted about having taken it from Israel at the direction of his god Chemosh. Later, both Isaiah in the 8th century BCE and Jeremiah in the 7th century BCE mentioned Nebo in prophecies directed against Moab. Issa 15. 2. Jah 48. 1, 22. Nebo is commonly identified with but Mkayet or Kiryat el-Makiyat, situated about 8 km 5 mi of Heshbon. There are ruins of an ancient fortress at this site. Also, large quantities of pottery fragments thought to date from the 12th to the beginning of the 6th century BCE have been found. 2. A city, representatives of which returned from Babylonian exile. As 2. 1, 29. Apparently to distinguish this Nebo from number 1, it is designated as the other Nebo. Ne 7. 33. Modern Uba, located about 11 km 7 mi NW of Hebron, has been presented as a possible identification. However, O Textoi Acute Muritra Longo, Nebuchadnezzar 484. A deity whose humiliation at the fall of Babylon was foretold by the prophet Isaiah. Issa 46. 1, 2. Nebo was worshipped both in Babylonia and Assyria. He was identified with the planet Mercury and was regarded as the son of Marduk and Subpanatu and the consort of Tashmitam. To his worshippers Nebo was a god of wisdom and learning, the god who possesses intelligence, he who hears from afar, he who teaches, and lord of the tablet stylus. The Seven Great Monarchies of the Ancient Eastern World, by G. Rawlinson, 1885, Volume I, p. 91. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, edited by J. Pritchard, 1974, p. 450. The prominence of this deity is illustrated by the Babylonian king Nabonidus referring to Nebo as the administrator of all the upper and netherworld, who lengthens the span of my life, and also as the one who extends the length of my rule. Nabonidus credited Nebo with placing into his hands the correct scepter, the lawful staff, which alone ensures the aggrandizement of the country. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, p. 310. Another indication of the importance of Nebo in Babylonian religion is the fact that a form of the name appears in the names of the Babylonian kings Nebuchadnezzar, Nabopolassar, and Nabonidus. Also in Nebuzaradan 2 25. 8 and perhaps Abednego. Dar 1. 7. Nebo is prominently associated with the ancient city of Borsippa, modern Burs or Burs Nimrod, near Babylon. In the spring, every New Year's Day, the image of Nebo was taken in sacred procession from Borsippa to Babylon. Thereafter, when the image was returned to its sanctuary at Borsippa, The image of Marduk, also called by his title Bel-Lord, was carried partway along with that of Nebo. It was most appropriate, therefore, that the prophecy of Isaiah specifically mentioned the coming disgrace of Bel and Nebo at Babylon's fall. Isra 46. 1, 2. Nebuchadnezzar Neb middle dot u middle dot and middle dot Nezzar, Nebuchadrezzar Neb middle dot u middle dot and middle dot Rezzar from Akkadion, meaning O Nebo, protect the heir. Second ruler of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Son of Nabopolassar and father of Marduk Evil-Merodach, who succeeded him to the throne. Nebuchadnezzar ruled as king for 43 years 624-582 BCE, this period including the 7 times during which he ate vegetation like a bull. Darfur. 31-33 To distinguish this monarch from the Babylonian ruler by the same name, but of a much earlier period, the Zend dynasty, historians refer to him as Nebuchadnezzar II. Historical notices in cuneiform inscriptions presently available about Nebuchadnezzar somewhat supplement the Bible record. They state that it was in the 19th year of Nabopolassar's reign that he assembled his army, as did his son Nebuchadnezzar, then crown prince. Both armies evidently functioned independently, and after Nabopolassar went back to Babylon within a month's time, Nebuchadnezzar successfully warred in Mount Venus territory, later returning to Babylon with much spoil. During the 21st year of Nabopolassar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar marched with the Babylonian army to Carchemish, there to fight against the Egyptians. He led his forces to victory. This took place in the 4th year of Judean King Jehoiakim 625 BCE. Jah 46. 2. The inscriptions further show that news of his father's death brought Nebuchadnezzar back to Babylon, and on the 1st of Elul August-September, he ascended a throne. In this his accession year he returned to Hajj, and in the month Shibat January-February, 624 BCE he took the vast booty of Hatti to Babylon. Assyrian and Babylonian Chronicles, by A.K. Grayson, 1975, p. 100 in 624 BCE. In the first official year of his kingship, Nebuchadnezzar again led his forces through Hatti. He captured and sacked the Philistine city of Ashkelon. See Ashkelon. During his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th years as king he conducted additional campaigns in Hatti, and evidently in the 4th year he made Judean King Jehoiakim Otex to execute Miritra Longo, Nebuchadnezzar 481 craftsmen, and warriors into Babylonian exile. It was Jehoiachin's uncle Mattaniah that Nebuchadnezzar made king of Judah, and he changed Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah. 2 Chi 24. 11-17. 2 Ch 36. 5-10. See chronology. Jehoiachin. Jehoiakim. Sometime later Zedekiah rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, allying himself with Egypt for military protection. S 17. 15. Compare Jah 27. 11-14. This brought the Babylonians back to Jerusalem, and on Tebeth December-January 10 in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem. 2 Chi 24. 20. 25. 1. 2 Ch 36. 13 However, news that a military force of Pharaoh was coming out of Egypt caused the Babylonians to lift the siege temporarily. Jah 37. 5 Subsequently Pharaoh's troops were forced to go back to Egypt, and the Babylonians resumed the siege against Jerusalem. Jah 37. 7-10 Finally, in 607 BCE on Tammuz June-July 9 in the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, Nebuchadnezzar's 19th year, if counting from his accession year or his 18th regnal year, a breach was made in Jerusalem's wall. Zedekiah and his men fled but were overtaken in the desert plains of Jericho. Since Nebuchadnezzar had retired to Riblah in the land of Hamath, Zedekiah was brought before him there. Nebuchadnezzar had all of Zedekiah's sons slaughtered, and then he blinded and bound Zedekiah in order to take him as a prisoner to Babylon. The post-conquest details, including the burning of the temple and the houses of Jerusalem, the disposition of temple utensils, and the taking of captives, were handled by Nebuzaradan, the chief of the bodyguard. Over those not taken captive, Gedaliah, an appointee of Nebuchadnezzar, served as governor. 2 Chi 25. 1-22. 2 Ch 36. 17-20. Jah 52. 1-27, 29. His dream of an immense image. The Book of Daniel states that it was in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's kingship, probably counting from the destruction of Jerusalem in 607 BCE, and therefore actually referring to his 20th regnal year, that Nebuchadnezzar had the dream about the golden Herod image. Da 2. 1. Although the magic-practicing priests, conjurers, and Chaldeans were unable to interpret this dream, the Jewish prophet Daniel did so. This moved Nebuchadnezzar to acknowledge Daniel's God as a God of gods, and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets. He then constituted Daniel ruler over all the jurisdictional district of Babylon, and the chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also appointed Daniel's 3 companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to administrative posts. Da 2. Later exiles of Jews. About 3 years later, in the 23rd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, more Jews were taken into exile. Ja 52. 30. This exile probably involved Jews who had fled to lands that were later conquered by the Babylonians. Lending support to this conclusion is the statement of the historian Josephus. In the 5th year after the sacking of Jerusalem, which was the 23rd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar marched against Kosar and, after occupying it, made war both on the Moabites and the Ammonites. Then, after making these nations subject to him, he invaded Egypt in order to subdue it, and, having killed the king who was then reigning and appointed another, he again took captive the Jews who were in the country and carried them to Babylon. Jewish Antiquities, X, 181, 182 9, 7. Takes Tyre. It was also some time after the fall of Jerusalem in 607 BCE that Nebuchadnezzar began the siege against Tyre. During this siege the heads of his soldiers were made bald from the chafing of the helmets, and their shoulders were rubbed bare from carrying materials used in the construction of siege works. As Nebuchadnezzar received no wages for serving as Jehovah's instrument in executing judgment upon Tyre, he promised to give him the wealth of Egypt. As 26. 7-11. 29. 17-20. See Tyre. 1 fragmentary Babylonian O textoi acute miritra longo, and Boshazban 482 mot, I reached the level of the water. I then saw that the wall, which my father had prepared, was too small in its construction. I built with bitumen and brick a mighty wall which, like a mountain, could not be moved, and connected it with the wall of my father. I laid its foundations on the breast of the underworld. Its top I raised up like a mountain. Along this wall to strengthen it I constructed a third, and as the base of a protecting wall I laid a foundation of bricks, and built it on the breast of the underworld and laid its foundation. The fortifications of Esagila and Babylon I strengthened, and established the name of my reign forever. Archaeology and the Bible, by G. Barton, 1949, pages 478, 479. The foregoing harmonizes with Nebuchadnezzar's boast made just before he lost his sanity. Is not this Babylon the Great, that I myself have built for the royal house with the strength of my might and for the dignity of my majesty? Da 4. 30. But when, in fulfillment of his divinely sent dream about the chopped-down tree, his reasoning powers were restored, Nebuchadnezzar had to acknowledge that Jehovah is able to humiliate those walking in pride. Da 4. 37. See Madness. Very religious. The indications are that Nebuchadnezzar was extremely religious, building and beautifying the temples of numerous Babylonian deities. Particularly was he devoted to the worship of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. To him Nebuchadnezzar gave credit for his military victories. Trophies of war, including the sacred vessels of Jehovah's temple, appear to have been deposited in the temple of Marduk Merodach. As 1. 7. 5. 14 says an inscription of Nebuchadnezzar. For thy glory, O exalted Merodach, a house have I made. May it receive within itself the abundant tribute of the kings of nations and of all peoples. Records of the past. Assyrian and Egyptian Monuments, London, 1875, Volume V, p. 135. The image of gold set up by Nebuchadnezzar in the plain of Dura was perhaps dedicated to Marduk and designed to promote religious unity in the empire. Enraged over the refusal of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to worship this image even after being given a second opportunity, Nebuchadnezzar commanded that they be thrown into a fiery furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. However, when these 3 Hebrews were delivered by Jehovah's angel, Nebuchadnezzar was forced to say that there does not exist another God that is able to deliver like this one. 3. Nebuchadnezzar also appears to have relied heavily on divination in planning his military moves. Ezekiel's prophecy, for example, depicts the king of Babylon as employing divination in deciding whether to go against Rabbah of Ammon or against Jerusalem. Es 21. 18-23. Nebuchadnezzar Shazban from Akkadion, meaning O Nebo, deliver me. The Rabsaris, chief court official, in the forces of Nebuchadnezzar that destroyed Jerusalem in 607 BCE. Nebuchadnezzar was one of several princes that directed the release of Jeremiah. 39. 13, 14. Either Nebuchadnezzar is referred to by his title, or else another man was also called Rabsaris in the group that sat down in the middle gate after the Babylonians first broke through Jerusalem's wall. 39. 2, 3. Nebuzaradan Neb from Babylonian, meaning Nebo has given offspring. Chief of the bodyguard and principal figure in Nebuchadnezzar's forces led the actual destruction of Jerusalem in 607 BCE. It does not appear that Nebuzaradan was present during the initial siege and breakthrough of Jerusalem, for it was about a month later that he came to Jerusalem, after King Zedekiah had been brought to Nebuchadnezzar and blinded. 2 Kai 25. 2-8. 39. 2, 3. 52. 6-11. From outside the city, Nebuzaradan directed the Babylonian operations of destroying the city, which began on the 7th day of the month, the 5th month, Ab, and which included looting the Otextoi acute Muritra Longo, Needles I 483, 159. IV, 42, Necho was the son of Samatichos. Samtichai succeeded his father as ruler of Egypt. Although beginning construction work on a canal linking the Nile with the Red Sea, he did not complete this project. However, he did send a Phoenician fleet on a voyage around Africa. This journey was successfully completed in 3 years. Toward the close of Josiah's 31-year reign 659-629 BCE, Pharaoh Necho was on his way to help the Assyrians at the river Euphrates. At that time Josiah disregarded the words of Necho from the mouth of God and was mortally wounded while attempting to turn the Egyptian forces back at Megiddo. About 3 months later, Pharaoh Necho took Joahaz, Josiah's successor to the throne, captive and made 25-year-old Eliakim his vassal, changing the new ruler's name to Joachim. Necho also imposed a heavy fine on the kingdom of Judah. 2 Ch 35. 20. 36. 4. 2 Chi 23. 29-35 at Karchemish. Between 3 and 4 years later 625 BCE Necho's forces suffered defeat at the hands of the Babylonians under the command of Nebuchadnezzar. 46. 2. Neck. The part of a human or an animal that connects the head with the rest of the body. The Hebrew terms for neck evidently emphasize its skeletal structure that can be broken. X 13. 13. Once a 4. 18 or the back part of the neck. G 49. 8. Jos 10. 24. In the Bible the term neck is frequently used in a figurative way. In Hebrew, one fleeing in defeat was literally said to turn his neck to the enemy. Compare Jos 7. 8, that is, the back of his neck. Therefore, to have one's hand on the back of the neck of his enemies was to conquer, or subdue, them. G 49. 8. 2 Sa 22. 41. PS 18. 40. With similar significance, on monuments of Egypt and Assyria, monarchs are represented in battle scenes as treading on the necks of their enemies. Likewise, Joshua ordered his army commanders, "Come forward. Place your feet on the back of the necks of these kings." Jos 10. 24. A yoke upon the neck indicated servitude, submission, or bondage. Ge 27. 40. Ge 30. 8. Ac 15. 10. The frequent expressions stiff-necked and hardened neck represent a rebellious and obstinate spirit. As a warning to us, The scriptures say that a man repeatedly reproved but making his neck hard will suddenly be broken, and that without healing. PR 29. 1. To 9. 6, 13. 31. 27. 2 Chi 17. 14. PS 75. 5. Isra 48. 4. Throat. The Hebrew word for throat evidently refers to the front part of the neck, where the organs for speaking and swallowing are found. PS 149. 6. Ch 2. 25. The importance of the discipline and authority of one's parents and, by implication, the eminent value of God's commandments and laws is emphasized by the admonition to bind them upon the throat, where beautiful and precious ornaments were worn. PR 1. 8, 9. 3. 1-3. 6. 20, 21. Walking with one's throat stretched forth can evidence haughtiness. Isra 3. 16. Of wicked men of lies and bloodshed, the Bible says, in their mouth there is nothing trustworthy. Their throat is an open burial place. PS 5. 9. Row 3. 13. Necklace. An ornamental chain or string of beads, gold, silver, coral, jewels, and the like, worn around the neck. Necklaces were anciently worn by women. 1. 10. 4. 9. Compare is 16. 11. And even by men, especially those of high station. GE 41. 41, 42. DA 5. 7, 16, 17, 29. The Midianites of Gideon's day put necklaces on the necks of their camels, and from these necklaces, apparently, moon-shaped ornaments hung as pendants. JG 8. 21, 26. Necklace-style chains were at times used for ornamentation, as for the temple pillars jachin and boas. 2ch 3. 15-17. Of boastful, wicked people it is said that haughtiness has served as a necklace to them. PS 73. 3, 6. On the other hand, the discipline of a father and the law of a mother are as a fine necklace to a son's throat. PR 1. 8, 9. Nadabu and ed middle dot by Arja is willing noble. O text to a acute muritra longo, negeb 484 needles I to be a small gate through which a camel, if relieved of its load, could pass with difficulty. However, the Greek word for needle found at Matthew 19. 24 and Mark 10. 25 middle dot fis is drawn from a verb meaning so. Also, the Greek word appearing in the parallel passage of Luke 18. 25 b middle dot low and e is used to refer to a literal surgical needle. Regarding these Greek terms, Vine's Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words notes, the idea of applying the needle's eye to small gates seems to be a modern one. There is no ancient trace of it. The Lord's object in the statement is to express human impossibility, and there is no need to endeavor to soften the difficulty by taking the needle to mean anything more than the ordinary instrument. 1981, Volume 3, p. 106. As a hyperbole, the illustration emphasized how difficult it would be for rich men not simply to begin serving God but actually to enter into the kingdom. 1t6. 17-19. Lu 13. 24. Negeb south. The Hebrew word enehef is thought to be derived from a root meaning be parched and often denotes the semi-arid areas of the mountains of Judah. Enehef also came to mean south and is used with reference to a southern side. New 35. 5. A southern boundary Joes 15. 4. And a southern gate as 46. 9. In some translations a distinction between the geographic designation and the compass direction is not maintained, resulting in confusing renderings. An example of this is Genesis 13. 1, where translating Enehef as south as KJ, makes it appear that Abraham went southward out of Egypt, when actually his direction was northward through the Negeb to Bethel. But this difficulty has been eliminated in many modern translations. At JB, NW, RS. Topography. The Negev of ancient times seems to have embraced an area extending from the district of Beersheba in the Enter Kadesh Barnea in the SGE 21. 14. New 13. 17, 22. 32. 8. The prophet Isaiah described this region as a land of hard conditions, a haunt of lions, leopards, and snakes. Is 30. 6. In the northern section, occasional springs, wells, and pools are found, and the tamarisk is one of the few trees that thrives there. GE 21. 33. To the south of Beersheba lie two small areas and one relatively large area of sand dunes. Much of the Negev is a plateau between 450 and 600 meters, 1,500 and 2,000 feet above sea level, with peaks up to 1,050 meters, 3,440 feet in elevation. To the S&D of Beersheba there are rugged ridges, generally running from E to W history. The cisterns, terrace walls, and ruins of many towns that have been found in the Negev indicate that the area anciently supported a considerable population. Here the patriarchs Abraham and Isaac found pasturage for their large flocks. GE 13. 1, 2. 20. 1. 24. 62. And in Abraham's time the Elamite king Chedorlaomer, with his 3 allies, defeated the inhabitants of the Negev. GE 14. 1-7. Centuries afterward, the Israelite spies sent by Moses entered the promised land from the Negev, which at that time was inhabited by the Amalekites. New 13. 17, 22, 29. Under the leadership of Joshua, all the inhabitants of the Negev were defeated. Jos 10. 40. 11. 16. And cities in this region became part of the territory of the tribe of Simeon. Jos 19. 1-6. Also, the nomadic Kenites, who were related to Moses through marriage, took up the Negev. The south of Judah, though generally a harsh terrain, at one time supported a sizable population. Nehemiah 485 residents in the Negev. JG 1. 16. Compare 1-15. 6, 7. The Israelites evidently did not maintain control over the area. Over the years there were repeated clashes with the Canaanites of the Negev and particularly with the Amalekites. JG 1. 9. 6. 3. 1-15. 1-9. 30. 1-20. From the city of Ziklag, given to him by the Philistine king Achish, David made raids upon the Jeshurites, the Gerzites, and the Amalekites of the Negev. 1-27. 5-8. Apparently not until David's reign as king, after the defeat of the Edomites, did Israel gain complete control of the Negev. 2-8. 13, 14. The later Judean king Uzziah evidently built towers and hewed out cisterns in this region. 2ch 26. 10. After the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, Obadiah foretold that the Israelites would be restored to their land, including the Negev. Ob 19, 20. Neglect. This word has the meaning of paying no attention to, disregarding, being remiss in care for or treatment of someone or something, failure to carry out or perform orders, duties, and so forth. The word can carry the connotation of willfulness or deliberateness in such failure, or merely of oversight through indifference or carelessness. One of several Hebrew terms having the meaning neglect is the verb parmiddle.ra, which literally means loosen. New 5. 18. It has the sense go ungroomed with regard to physical appearance. Let 10. 6. Go unrestrained with regard to conduct. X 32. 25. And neglect or shun discipline. PR 13. 18. 15. 32. Compare X 5. 4, where it is rendered leave off. Another is the word amiddle.zav, which literally means abandon. Leave. De 29. 25. 1 Chi 12. 8. Thus, Nehemiah encouraged true worshippers not to neglect the house of the true God. NE 10. 39. Compare 13. 11. Another Hebrew term to designate neglect literally means slackness, like that of a loose bough. J 48. 10. Compare PS 78. 57. The Greek word lo from me, not, and me-lo, care for contains more definitely the idea of unconcern, not caring, and not so much the thought of unintentional oversight or the overlooking of something. After describing the severe punishment for disobedience to the Mosaic law, the Apostle Paul says, "How shall we escape if we have neglected gr. a /es, having been unconcerned of a salvation of such greatness in that it began to be spoken through our Lord." While God joined in bearing witness, here he indicates that it is not the matter of an oversight, but the lack of concern, a drifting away. Verses 1, disobedience to the word of God spoken through his only begotten Son. Heb 2. 1-4, int. Matthew used a form of this Greek word in relating Jesus' illustration of the marriage feast. Those invited by the king to his son's wedding feast did not come. Why? Not through oversight, but, unconcerned, they went off, one to his own field, another to his commercial business. For this lack of concern they were counted unworthy. Mount 22. 5-8. The young man Timothy was given a heavy responsibility as an overseer in Ephesus. Paul admonished him, "Do not be neglecting or being careless of the gift in you that was given you through a prediction, and when the body of older men laid their hands upon you." It took much energetic action on Timothy's part to avoid being neglectful. He had to be absorbed in his reading, proper teaching, conduct, exhortation, and example, showing concern by constant, undeviating attention. Otherwise he could lose out by negligence, by lack of real concern for God's favor bestowed upon him. 1-4. 11-16, int. Paul quotes Jehovah's words concerning Israel, wherein he spoke of the law covenant, saying, "Which covenant of mine they themselves broke, although I myself had husbandly ownership of them." J 31. 32. In place of "although I myself had husbandly ownership of them," the Septuagint reads, "and I stopped caring for them." This doubtless explains why the quotation, at Hebrews o textoi acute miritra longo, Nehemiah 486-2. Son of Azbuk and prince over half the district of Bethzur. Since the town of Bethzur was located in the mountainous region of Judah. Jos 15. 21, 48, 58, Nehemiah may have been a Judean. In 455 BCE he shared in repairing the wall of Jerusalem. Ne 3. 16. 3. Son of Hakliah and brother of Hanani. Cupbearer to Persian king Artaxerxes Longimanus and, later, governor of the Jews, rebuilder of Jerusalem's wall, and writer of the Bible book bearing his name. Ne 1. 1, 2, 11. 2. 1. 5. 14, 16. During the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, in the month Chislev November-December, Nehemiah, while in Shushan the castle, received visitors, his brother Hanani and other men from Judah. Upon his inquiry, they told him about the bad plight of the Jews and that the wall and gates of Jerusalem were still in ruins. Nehemiah was moved to tears. For days thereafter he mourned, continually fasting and praying. He confessed Israel's sin and, on the basis of God's words to Moses to 30. 1-4, petitioned Jehovah to make him an object of pity before King Artaxerxes so that his plan to rebuild Jerusalem's wall might be successful. Ne 1. Later, in the month of Nisan March-April, Nehemiah's prayers were answered. The king noticed that Nehemiah's face was gloomy and asked why. Nehemiah then informed him about the sorry state of affairs in Jerusalem. When asked what he was seeking to secure, Nehemiah, immediately praying to God, requested permission from the king to return and rebuild Jerusalem. The request was granted. Additionally, Nehemiah received letters from the king, entitling him to freedom of passage through the areas under the jurisdiction of Governors W of the Euphrates River and also granting timber supplies for the project. With chiefs of the military force and horsemen, he departed for Jerusalem. Ne 2. 1-9. Jerusalem's wall rebuilt. After being in Jerusalem for 3 days, Nehemiah, unknown to anyone except a few men who were with him, made a nighttime inspection of the city. While the rest were on foot, Nehemiah rode an animal, probably a horse or an ass. The ruins became so extensive as to obstruct passage, but Nehemiah was able to finish his inspection. NE 2. 11-16. Following the completion of his survey, Nehemiah revealed his plan to the Jews, drawing to their attention Jehovah's hand in the matter. Encouraged thereby, they responded, "Let us get up, and we must build." Despite the derisive words of Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian, repair work began on about the 4th of July-August. NE 2. 17-20. Compare NE 6. 15. As the work progressed, Sanballat and Tobiah continued to deride and mock the efforts of the Jews to repair the wall of Jerusalem. Nehemiah made this a subject of prayer, and the people continued to have a heart for working. When the wall reached half its height, Sanballat, Tobiah, and neighboring peoples intensified their opposition to the point of conspiring to fight against Jerusalem. Nehemiah repeatedly received reports to that effect from Jews living near the city. Again Nehemiah manifested prayerful reliance on Jehovah. To meet the tense situation, he armed the workmen, arranged for others to stand guard, and outlined an alarm system. Nehemiah did not even take off his clothes at night, evidently to be ready to fight in the event of an alarm signal from the watch. NE 4. Urgent as the situation was, Nehemiah was not too busy to give due consideration to the outcry of the Jews. Hearing their complaints that they were being oppressed by having to pay interest, he censured the nobles and deputy rulers, arranged a great assembly, and, after exposing this evil, instructed that the situation be rectified. NE 5. 1-13. It was after this that the enemies made attempts to stop the rebuilding work. 4 times they tried to lure Nehemiah away from his project, but he informed them that he was unable to take time off to execute Miracle Longo. Nehemiah, Book of 487 Shin Procure thereby could have served as a basis for taking steps to increase the population of Jerusalem. Apparently while Nehemiah was giving consideration to this genealogical enrollment, he found the record of those who had returned from Babylonian exile with Zerubbabel. NE 7. 4-7. Law observance restored. It was probably at Nehemiah's direction that an assembly was held in the public square near the Watergate. Although Ezra the priest evidently took the lead in giving instruction in the law, Nehemiah also shared therein. NE 8. 1-12. Next, the 8-day festival of booths was held. 2 days later the Israelites convened again. During this assembly a general confession of Israel's sin was made. Thereafter a written confession contract was drawn up. This confession contract or trustworthy arrangement was attested by the princes, Levites, and priests. Nehemiah, the Toshata governor, was the first to test it by seal. NE 8. 13. 10. When all the people agreed to refrain from intermarriage with foreigners, to observe the Sabbaths, and to support the temple service. Next, 1 person out of every 10 was selected by lot to dwell permanently in Jerusalem. NE 10. 28. 11. 1. It was after this that the wall of Jerusalem was inaugurated. For the occasion Nehemiah appointed 2 large thanksgiving choirs and processions to make a tour of the wall in opposite directions. It was done, and all met at the temple to offer sacrifices. Additionally, men were appointed to be in charge of the contributions for the priests and Levites. NE 12. 27-47. About 12 years later, in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes, Nehemiah left Jerusalem. Upon his return, he found deplorable conditions among the Jews. Eliashib the high priest had made a dining hall in the courtyard of the temple for the use of Tobiah, the very man who earlier had viciously opposed the work of Nehemiah. Immediately Nehemiah took action. He threw all of Tobiah's furniture outside the dining hall and instructed that the dining hall be cleansed. Additionally, Nehemiah took measures to ensure the contributions for the Levites and enforced strict Sabbath observance. He also administered discipline against those who had taken foreign wives, whose sons by these women were not even able to speak the Jewish tongue. And I began to find fault with them and called down evil upon them and strike some men of them and pull out their hair and make them swear by God. You should not give your daughters to their sons, and you should not accept any of their daughters for your sons or yourselves. Nehemiah's finding fault with these men doubtless was his reproving and rebuking them by means of God's law, exposing their wrong action. These men were bringing the restored nation into disfavor with God, after God had kindly repatriated them from Babylon to restore true worship at Jerusalem. Nehemiah called down evil upon them, meaning that he recited the judgments of God's law against such violators. He struck them, probably not personally, but ordered them flogged as in official judicial action. He pulled out a portion of their hair. It was a symbol of moral indignation and ignominy before the people. Compare as 9:3. Nehemiah then chased away the grandson of High Priest Eliashib, who had become a son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite. NE 13. 1-28. Nehemiah, an outstanding example. Nehemiah stands out as a sterling example of faithfulness and devotion. He was unselfish, leaving behind a prominent position as cupbearer in the courtyard of Artaxerxes to undertake the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls. As there were many enemies, Nehemiah willingly exposed himself to danger in behalf of his people and true worship. Not only did he direct the work of repairing the wall of Jerusalem, but he also had an active, personal share in the task. He wasted no time, was courageous and fearless, relied fully on Jehovah, and was otextoi acute miritra longo. Nehemiah, Book of 488 in this case is not reckoned as starting in Nisan March-April, for Chislev of the 20th year could not then precede Nisan mentioned at any 2:1 of the same 20th year. So it may be that Nehemiah used his own count of time, reckoning the lunar year as beginning with Tishri September-October, which month Jews today recognize as the beginning of their civil year. Another possibility is that the reign of the king was reckoned from the actual date that the monarch ascended the throne. This could be so even though the Babylonian scribes continue to reckon the years of the Persian king's reign on their customary basis of a Nisan to Nisan count, as their cuneiform tablets show they did. Reliable historical evidence in the fulfillment of Bible prophecy point to 455 BCE as the year in which Nisan of the 20th year of Artaxerxes' reign fell. See Persia, Persians the reigns of Xerxes and of Artaxerxes. Accordingly, the Chislev preceding Nisan of that 20th year would fall in 456 BCE and the 32nd year of Artaxerxes' reign, the last date mentioned in Nehemiah 13:6 would include part of 443 BCE. Therefore, the book of Nehemiah covers a period from Chislev of 456 BCE until sometime after 443 BCE. It was in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes' reign that Nehemiah left Jerusalem. Upon his return, he found that the Jews were not supporting the priests and Levites, the Sabbath law was being violated, many had married foreign women, and the offspring of the mixed marriages did not even know how to speak the language of the Jews. NE 13. 10-27 For conditions to have deteriorated to this point indicates that Nehemiah's absence entailed a considerable period. But there is no way to events surrounding the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem and the subsequent clearing out of wrong practices from among the Jews covers a period that begins more than 80 years after the Jews returned from exile in Babylon. Jerusalem's walls are rebuilt in the face of opposition in Shushan. Nehemiah learns about the ruined state of Jerusalem's wall. He prays for Jehovah's support, then asks the Persian monarch Artaxerxes for permission to go and rebuild the city and its wall. Artaxerxes consents. 1. 2. 9 Arriving in Jerusalem, Nehemiah inspects the ruined walls by night. Afterward he reveals to the Jews his purpose to rebuild. 2. 11-18 Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Foreigners all oppose the rebuilding. First they try ridicule, then they conspire to fight against Jerusalem. Nehemiah arms the workers, and they continue building. 2. 19. 4. 23 plots against Nehemiah himself fail, and the wall is completed in 52 days. 6. 1-19 The wall is inaugurated. At the ceremony 2 thanksgiving choirs and processions march in opposite directions on top of the wall and meet at the temple. There is great rejoicing. 12. 27-43 The affairs of Jerusalem are put in order after the wall is completed. Nehemiah secures Jerusalem with gates and assigns duties to gatekeepers, singers, and Levites. He appoints Hanani and Hananiah to be in charge of the city. 7. 1-3 Nehemiah sets out to make a genealogical record of the people. He finds the book of genealogical enrollment of those returning from Babylon with Zerubbabel. Priests that cannot establish their genealogy abide until the priest with Urim and Thummim stands up. 7. 5-73 Jerusalem is underpopulated, so 1 out of every 10 of the people is designated by lot to reside in the city. 7. 4.